Hi, hope you enjoyed last week. We are in week 7 and the goal in week 7 and 8 is the same, but we have a lot of building up to do. What I'm going to first do though is something that I do always. I hope you have had a chance to finish your assessments, assignments, the video carefully, and you're up to speed with last 6 weeks. What did we do last week? In some senses, it was very easy, but in other senses, it was very challenging. To me, stocks are easy to value or think about in a valuation kind of framework, but very tough to internalize as to what's going on. So very quickly, we started off, and I'm going to recap, that you need invested capitals per share that earns an ROI, and that creates earnings per share, which in our book is cash flows per share. This is pretty simple engine of growth. Then you have to make decisions about how much to pay as dividend and how much to retain. And the retained earnings are to generate growth. I'm by no means saying that you cannot pay out all your dividends. In fact, it may be a smart thing to do if you don't have good ideas, rather than just to be control-oriented and expand. Okay? We said this was in a ratio divided by EPS, and we call this B, and we call this 1 minus B. Okay? So this is the fraction paid out. This is the fraction. This is the fraction retained. This is the fraction paid out. Why did we do this? To understand then what happens. This part goes and replenishes your growth, your capital stock, and therefore you are allowed to grow, or you can grow B times ROI is your growth, where the return is on your new investments and B is the fraction of capital, fraction of cash flows from previous investments that you choose to invest. One quick comment. We are an all-equity firm. We could borrow to grow too, but the principle would be the same. You could borrow to grow, but the key is growth in what? This growth is in cash flows. So the formula becomes P naught div 1 over R minus G. Quickly, what will happen if you have no intentions of growing in this setup? Very simple. B will become 0. You'll pay out all your dividends. So 1 minus B will be 1 or 100%. Remember, these are fractions. And G will become 0. But what will div 1 become? So do you see, I've just quickly told you. What will div 1 become? Div 1 will become earnings per share. So for no growth, the formula is EPS over R. Again, R. Okay? And why? Because if there's no growth, the R is straightforward, but if there's no growth, it implicitly in our structure means that you're not reinvesting. If you're not reinvesting, earnings per share is all going out to dividends. But remember, what comes first? Investment. After that, you earn a return and generate earnings per share. And then you make the decision to pay. I really want you to understand that this is coming from your assets. I'm sorry, I keep saying that. That's very important. So this was relatively challenging, but the formulas were relatively easy. Now the quick question is, how do you know whether growth is good or bad? You get to know growth is good or bad if you're making a rate of return greater than the cost of capital. Or, in other words, you're picking value-generating projects. So in some sense, you should be thinking about the value of your stock. Stocks, $50 was the value without growth, and you want to increase that. And the only way to increase that is by positive NPV projects. The challenge is we get caught up in growth of cash flows, and many times that hurts the company. It may take a while to be revealed, but it gets revealed eventually and the companies goes up, and it hurts society, the shareholders, and so on. So now that was a recap very quickly, and I did it in a little bit detail because it was an important topic and it's fundamental to finance to be able to understand stocks. Apart from the fact that it's my favorite topic. So what I'm going to do now is let's take a quick break and jump into week 7. But before you take the break, just remember a couple of things. I want you to remember what the topic is going to be for the next 2 weeks and think a little bit about it, and then we'll take a break. We're going to talk about risk and return. We have thought a lot about return. We have always had risk at the back of our heads, back of our minds, if you may. But we'll talk about risk now. And to me, it's the most fascinating topic under the sun. And the reason of risk behind equity is why I like it. Is because equity reflects risk-taking, but sensible and value-creating risk-taking. So when you come back, please remember we'll do focus on risk, but risk and return always go together. Point number 1. Point number 2, I warned you that whenever I'm crossing a boundary of a subject matter that's not central, but subject matter that's not central to this class, but is central to finance, I'll warn you. Another warning, I did it with cash flows and accounting. Another warning, you got to know statistics. So I'm spending 2 weeks on risk and return, and today I'll spend a fair amount of time on risk in the statistical sense of measurement and so on and so forth, and I'll cover some statistics. But the onus is on you to review it. I may not take breaks with examples because I'm largely doing the concepts, but you should take breaks and do the assessments. I've also put up a note on the website on fundamental statistics that I'm covering with examples so that you can execute. Finally, Excel can do everything. The good news is, even if you don't do anything of this, you'll still be able to do the financial applications. The bad news is that's not a good idea. Okay, see you in a little.